Another point is that people say that God is universal and inclusive. But when you look at the majority of people, more than 90% they say that God is inclusive and God is all-loving and that God is basically universal. Basically everyone will say that this energy, this light is love.
Welcome, loving viewers, to the conclusion of our two-part program featuring René Jorgensen, founder of NDE Light, a non-profit organization with the mission to share information on near-death experiences, or NDEs, with the public. Mr. Jorgensen had an intense spiritual experience while in India 10 years ago and encountered a brilliant light emanating with God's infinite love. Based on his extensive research, he feels this profound event was very similar to a near-death experience. Mr. Jorgensen is now an inspirational speaker on NDEs and has written 3 books regarding this phenomenon: Awakening After Life, Behind 90 Minutes in Heaven, and The Light Behind God. Through many interviews with those who have undergone NDEs, he has found common elements in their reports regarding visiting heavenly realms and then returning to the physical plane. René Jorgensen discovered that a nearly universal theme that recurs in his interviewees' accounts is being touched by a heavenly light.
When we look at the core of the experience, 72% say that the light is the essence of the experience. 80% in my research will say this light is God. Even a greater majority, 85%, will say that this light is love, it's joy, and then there's a sense of heightened awareness. On top of that essence, people will project their cultural conditioning if they're Christian or if they're Buddhist or wherever they're from. Many people in my own research, they agree on that the core is universal. The essence of the experience is this love, this joy, and this sense of heightened awareness. They will say that's the core, and this core cannot be pinned down on one specific interpretation or religion. People will experience this core differently, and they will have different projections and images, but the core is universal. Based on the evidence from near-death experience, God is really beyond our comprehension, and God is so much greater than what we can comprehend, and God is also inclusive. God is really total, unlimited, infinite, unconditional love. We also find in religion, from the earliest Babylonian religion, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and all the way up to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we also find light. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's called the clear light nature. So we find light as a universal thing in all religions. And this light that people experience beyond death is very much connected to religion. I ask people if they believe that this light is what is behind the religions of the world. More than 80% say yes, they believe that what they experience is the essence, the core behind what we have in world religions and in what we find in spirituality.
So would you say that these experiences can be an evidence of life after death?
Yes, I definitely. I think having studied it and looked at all the evidence, and just the fact that people who are clinically dead come back and tell these stories, these experiences are very similar to what we find in religion and in spirituality, that is as close to an evidence as we can guess. Of course, the skeptics will say, it's all a hallucination, but I think when you talk to these people or when you read some of the testimonies and you hear their sense of conviction, most of the doubt goes away, especially if you are an open person, if you're a spiritual or religious person.
What are you basing all your studies on?
I've done a 15-page questionnaire, really in-depth, where I try to ask questions. So I've taken 16 people who have a near-death experience, and I've given them the same questionnaire. I'm trying to figure out what can we say with a certain amount of certainty about the experience. Find a consensus, so where there's a majority of people, say 70, 80, or 90% of people who agree on a certain thing or a certain answer. I'm looking for consensus in my interpretation of the experience. So that's basically what I'm trying to do with the research. I'm trying to learn more about it, but trying to figure out what I can say with some level of certainty from an objective standpoint, instead of just relying on one person. I'm trying to look at a broader view, more objective way to see what is the consensus.
A life review may be a component of a near-death experience and involves seeing part or all of one's life up to that moment very quickly. Many have reported feelings of sadness upon viewing some of their past actions.
100% in my research say that God is not angry. God does not punish and God is not angry in any way. There's not one single evidence of God having ever been angry. I think that's a very important message to communicate. There are consequences. We do see these life reviews where people have distressing experiences, and there are consequences to you hurting other people or breaking the golden rule. And there are consequences to being separate from God. But very, very clearly, it is not God that punishes. We have free will, it is our own choice, so we suffer our own consequences. God is not angry and punishing, and I think that's a very important conclusion from the research. There has been cases of people who have life reviews where they've seen the consequences of being cruel to animals. It's very clear that if this light, it's the soul, it's the being of all life, it's also an animal. So if you are cruel to an animal, you will have to experience that cruelty. It goes back to Aboriginal religion, that we should respect all life because all of life is interconnected, like nature, the climate, everything is interconnected. It's also a scientific conclusion that through quantum entanglement, what's called non-locality, everything is entangled, everything is interconnected. Some people say that these near-death experiences are a wake-up call. It's an evolutionary call. As we evolve, we will learn to respect life more, and that, I believe, includes all life, because I believe everything has that spark of life in it. Everything has a soul, and therefore we need to respect those other souls.
Another common observation by his NDE interviewees is that being in the presence of God or heaven is almost indescribable and not able to be put into human language.
It is, in a way, beyond human comprehension. People will say when they leave their body and go to the other side and have this experience, they will, in the moment, they will know what it is. It is love, it is compassion. But when they come back, they will have difficulty putting words on it. They will say that God is greater than what we can conceive. This you find in the Bible too, or in some philosophies, that the evidence of God is something that is greater than what we can conceive. And so they will say, because we cannot fully comprehend the experience and we cannot fully comprehend what God is, we cannot say that God is only this, or we cannot say God is only that. We cannot limit God. That is a human notion, a human inclination, say God is only this, God is only the Bible, or God is only this religion. We cannot limit this experience because it is so much greater than we could ever comprehend. So we cannot limit it to one single human definition or human interpretation. It is simply too big for that.
What happens after an NDE? Do people generally change their approach to life or how they view it? We asked Mr. Jorgensen about his findings in this area.
If you look at what happens after the near-death experience, it's called after effects. What you have is that 80 to 90% of people who come back from near-death experience will report significant or radical life changes. There's been many studies where they've asked people and analyzed what kind of changes happened after your experience. 80 to 90% of people report they become more loving, more caring, more compassionate, more forgiving. People change and become more positive. Tells us something about the nature of this light. It is real love, and that's why people become more loving. It's a response. You have a profound, deep experience of love, and then you change your life and you become more loving. That's cause and effect. I would like to read some testimonies from the research that has been done on the near-death experience. The first one says, before my experience, I wondered about death, and I was afraid of the unknown. Now I know that there is no pain. There is nothing other than the ending of one chapter and the turning of the page. For me, this is also my experience. When I left my body, there was a new dimension, there was a new world. And you don't even need to believe in God. You know God is real because you have had a direct experience beyond reasonable doubt that He does exist. Here's another person who describes how death and going to the other side is. This person says, My experience of death was wonderful. Great joy and no fear at all. I was overwhelmed with this joy. The feeling I try to explain as love, as an explosion, as a very powerful sensation of love, of joy, of peace. It's described by many as a homecoming. You return back to your home, or you return back to your true self, or you return back to God.
Rene Jorgensen is among those who have made significant changes to their lives following contact with the divine.
I really see the greatness of all life, and I try to respect all life, and that's why I have become a vegetarian myself. I believe we can survive, we can live and eat without killing, without taking the life of animals. It makes me happy to think that I'm not killing animals.
Rene Jorgensen, we sincerely thank you for discussing your intriguing research findings regarding near-death experiences. Per its mission, may your organization, NDE Light, continue to assist in the evolution of human consciousness through spreading public awareness of the importance and significance of near-death experiences, and that we are part of the divine. For more details on Rene Jorgensen, please visit www.renejorgensen.com. To learn more about NDE Light, please visit www.ndelight.org. Books by Mr. Jorgensen are available at either website. Honored viewers, thank you for joining us on this edition of Science and Spirituality. Coming up next is Words of Wisdom, following noteworthy news. May the light of heaven forever shine within us all.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/SS